Welcome, everyone, to this episode of School on a Mission. I'm Gina Watts, and I'm here with the steadfast and the wise,
Whoa,
Andrew McPeak.
how about those words?
How you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing great. Ready for this episode. I'm excited.
Awesome. Friends, if you believe school should be more than just essays and GPAs, if you believe EQs are just as important as IQs, and if you expect amazing things from the next generation, then you're in the right place, because we believe that too. Today's episode is for every school leader who has ever stared at an overstuffed calendar and wondered, how did I get here? We're talking about the power of healthy boundaries and learning when to say no, with someone who's been there, done that, and coached others to do it well.
Absolutely. So, as always, we start with a question of the day. And since we're talking about saying no, Gina, what is one thing you have said yes to in the past that you now wish you had said no to?
Man,
This is good.
So, like, personally, there's a lot. But that's not this kind of episode.
No.
So,
That's therapy.
Yeah, that's therapy. So professionally, it was actually really hard to think about it when I've said yes and I wish I would have said no. But if I reflect on just my own professional journey, I would say I have said yes too many times to like overfill my schedule, to like work. So I can give you a million examples, but all of my life of working, I've always had, probably except for 2 years, I've always worked 2 or 3 jobs at the same time.
Wow.
So whether that's like contracting and like serving a client and having a full-time job, or if that's like having multiple jobs, right?
Yeah.
I have done that, and it's been based off of drive to achieve more, to do more. And I think too, being a teen mom, you guys know part of my story is just, I think I felt like I had to, like I had to prove something. And so I think when I think about the yeses, it was those yeses that I just kept pursuing and pursuing.
Where you were trying to prove something to an invisible someone.
Invisible.
Yeah.
Completely. Because I was surrounded by people who loved me and believed in me.
Yeah. Well, I will also say, I think the other reason that you had so many opportunities because you're also incredibly talented as
thank
well.
you, friend.
So,
Thank
and everybody saw and recognized that.
And they were just like, give her more.
Yeah.
And she's not going to say no.
Yeah. Her best feature is she says yes to whatever you ask her to do. It's incredible.
True story. I'm learning in my age.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
How about you, dear?
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought of a number of things like you. I too have found myself wearing a lot of hats at various points in my career. I thought of something that it's like I had regrets and now I have no regrets. Like I said yes to this leadership program one time, and so I was going to lead a class. So I come in and they're sophomores. And they neglected to mention when I said yes that these kids are in this program till they graduate high school.
Oh.
And the program met on every other Saturday, 20 times every year. So Andrew was giving up every other Saturday until like 3 p.m. For 2.5 years. But I got to say, looking back, I actually did really love being a part of that. I'm glad I said yes to that. But here's my true story, okay? So, I travel and speak sometimes as a part of my work, and we get requests from all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. And one time they called and asked about having me come speak. They wanted me to talk about Generation Z and all those kinds of things. And this is probably 6 years ago. And they wanted me to come speak, and it was a fundraiser for their nonprofit. And, I pulled up the nonprofit. It was like, this doesn't look too bad. And Gina, I drove up and got there, and it's like 300 people for this fundraiser. And I pulled up, I don't know why I didn't look at it until the day I got there, but I pulled up the other speakers who were going to speak at this thing. And I start reading their bios, and I go, oh no. This event is deeply, deeply political.
Oh.
And I had no idea what I was walking into. And so I'm sitting there at the quote unquote speakers table at the front and going like, like this organization, don't like the direction this night is heading. And I came back from that event and I told the person who does all of our booking, I was like, no fundraisers for
No.
me ever again. We're just not going to go anywhere near there.
Lesson
Just walked
learned.
into a lion's den more or less there. So
Well, I mean, that's a great example though, because your intentions were good, right?
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
not always clear or easy to say
absolutely.
no,
Yeah.
especially when you care deeply about your work or the work of the people that you're serving. But that's why we're so glad that Pam is here. Pam Bibik is currently the principal at South Forsyth High School in Georgia. She is a seasoned award-winning school administrator, a transformational leader, and a fierce advocate for helping others discover their strengths and purpose. With over 2 decades of experience, she's led both middle and high schools, built high-performing teams, and pioneered leadership development for students and staff alike. Pam brings insight, clarity, and a whole lot of practical wisdom for leaders who want to protect their time and energy so that they can lead from a healthy place. Let's get to know Pam.
Okay. So I am entering my 27th year as an educator. I came to education because I was in the middle of my college career and I was not finding it purposeful and decided that I wanted to change the world. And as I looked at the world, I felt that there's only there are only so many people that you interact with that you really can impact. And I saw opportunities in education where I could make that happen. So I'm just one of those crazy people who decided that I wanted to make it my life's work to change things. So I was already halfway through college, actually 3/4 of the way through college, and had been an economics and political science major. So when I sat down with the advisor, she said, "Honey, you're going to have to be a social studies teacher." I wanted to be an English teacher, but it has been an interesting journey. I never wanted to be a principal, never set out to be a principal, loved the classroom and I had different leaders who came to me and said, "I think you should do this, and I think you should do this." And so now here I sit in my let's see, this is my 8th year as a it's my 3rd year as a high school principal. Before that, I was a middle school principal for 6 years, and, before that, I was an assistant principal. So it's been an interesting journey, but it's been fun the whole way.
27 years. I mean, that's how long I've been a parent, but also
Not that anybody's counting.
I'm just saying, that's no small feat.
Yeah.
And Pam's journey is a powerful example in saying yes to growth while staying grounded in her purpose.
Yeah. And I think the experience that she had is something you and I both understand too. Like she didn't plan to be a principal, right?
Mhm.
And yet here she is leading one of the largest high schools in Georgia. I think it shows you what can happen when others see leadership in you, they call it out, and all you really have to say is just say, I'm willing, I'm going to step up.
Mhm. Pam isn't just leading. She's not just stepping up. She's doing this incredibly well. She's known for building high-performing teams and setting tone of healthy boundaries, which is exactly why we asked her to share what she has learned about boundaries through it all.
So I think the most shocking thing whenever you become a school leader, generally you've been a classroom teacher and you have pacing guides and you have a calendar and you have units, and there are very clear beginnings and endings for things. When you step into leadership, there are no more beginnings and endings. It just continues all the time. Um, and I remember when I first stepped out of the classroom as a leader, sitting at that desk that first time and thinking, okay, now what do I do? And very quickly, you find that there are going to be all sorts of things that you do. And I, I think at the beginning, I didn't really know my job. And when I say that, the outcomes that I needed to be able to measure and be able to know, how I was being successful. I'd always been a person who it was very clear to me, I'm going to do this, my students are going to achieve this, and this is how I know that I've been successful. And I think that becomes a little hazier once you become a leader because there are things like the plumbing is not working today. And so it's not the same anymore. And so, one thing that I learned is to kind of break it up into what kind of culture I want to achieve, relationships with all the different groups, and then what are the achievement and growth indicators that I want from whether it's my community, whether it's my team, whether, whatever group, and really clearly setting those. Um, so that was a big part of it.
Gina, I really resonate with that image of Pam sitting at her desk and thinking, so now what do I do? Right? It's such an honest moment, and it's such a shift from the structure of classroom teaching to that open-ended, swirling, like problem after problem, issue after issue thing that is leading a school.
When I talked to Pam, I was telling her how my brother was a building leader and now runs his own, hybrid co-op program. And then while I wasn't a building leader, I was an executive director. So I held a building, right? I was
Yep.
responsible for the operations of a building. But, when we were sharing our stories with each other, we were it was a clear reminder that leadership doesn't have to have a clear beginning or an end.
Yeah.
Right? It's constant.
Yeah.
It's one that every administrator can relate to. And often you're not fully prepared for the journey.
Yep.
But you know that you're on one. And you can't especially when you're moving from a teacher in a classroom experience to a building leader or some form of leadership in education. It's not like you can just close the metaphorical lesson plan, and walk away.
Yeah.
Like it's not just over that day.
Yeah, but I love how Pam frames it, though. She leans into purpose. She's thinking about the culture she wants to shape, the outcomes she wants to see. She's making decisions with those things in mind. And I think that kind of clarity, like keeping those things at the forefront of your mind, is just powerful.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of clarity, Pam has developed a brilliant tool to help her stay grounded in what matters most. If you're leading a school or even just leading yourself, you're going to want to write this down. So go grab some pen and paper.
So, I think one of the first things you have to learn is that your time, you should think of it like you think of money. And you have to have a time budget. What I find over and over again in my interactions with other leaders is they get to the end of the day and they really don't know how they spent their time. And I think that's often because they haven't defined for themselves, what am I trying to accomplish each day? And they don't have those markers yet for themselves. And they are not using any tool to budget their time. So we often hear about being a servant leader. And I think people interpret servant leader as what anyone needs, I'm going to do. And instead, a servant leader, in my belief, is a person who serves to grow other people. And that there's a huge difference in being able, like when the plumbing's not working, you're being a servant leader because you're out there making sure that the plumbing gets to work. But if I am the only person in my building who knows how to make sure that the plumbing works, then I've not been a servant leader. I'm doing all the fishing and no other fishermen are out there with me. And am I really being a leader then? Or am I just being the person who is making sure the plumbing is working? And I think the first thing you have to do is kind of look at yourself as a leader. And you have to figure out for yourself, so what need am I fulfilling by having everyone think that I'm their person? Because and it's sort of like parenting. You grow your children so that your children can go out and do great things for themselves. Otherwise, I'm not ever going to change the world if I'm the only one who can do what needs to be done. Changing the world means that I create an army of people who also want to change the world and who I inspire, you know. And the fun of leadership is the inspiration. That's where the joy is. And if you spend so much time on all of these other things like checking emails, you will burn out and you will burn out fast.
Well, I hope you went and grabbed a pen and paper. You probably should have a whole notebook.
You should have listened to Gina. That's all we're saying.
Because Pam is just dropping so much wisdom, so much gold in that very short segment.
Seriously. One of my favorite takeaways is this idea of a time budget, right? So I don't know about you, but I have had so many of those days where I get to 5 p.m. and I'm like, what did I even do today? You know, that's a very real feeling.
Pam reminds us that just like we budget money with intention, we should budget our time with intention. You know, Andrew and I get to lead on this podcast, but we also get to lead teams.
Yeah.
And thinking about our time and thinking about how we have to budget time, or times where we need to talk to each other and get together, it always feels like it's like crammed in.
Yep.
And this was a powerful lesson even for me to learn as I spent time with Pam. You know, so if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, how do you know if you've had a successful day?
Yeah.
Budgeting time, that is just transformational.
Yeah. And she, of course, layers that with this powerful reframing of what it really means to be a servant leader, right? So many people listening to this have heard of and believe in the power of servant leadership, especially in schools, right? But it's so easy for us to fall into the trap of thinking servant leadership means I say yes to everyone. But that is not what it is, right? That's not what servant leadership really means. We're not doing everything for everyone.
Yeah, Pam's definition is much deeper. Servant leadership isn't about doing all the things. It's about equipping others to do them. It's also not just like dropping it, right? And saying like, here, go do it.
Yeah.
She's like equipping and teaching people how to lead with her. You know, so she's not just fishing, but she's teaching others to fish. If leadership becomes a constant scramble to meet everyone's needs alone, it's not sustainable. True leadership is about growing people. It's about building capacity and finding joy in that inspiration. We asked Pam how she manages her responsibilities while sustaining joy and emotional well-being.
So the number one, whenever I was first a principaling is when it really hit me the hardest. I had so much coming at me. I had a lot of pressure to be everybody's person. And I knew that what I was doing was not working because I was working constantly and I felt just deflated. So I just went out and I started looking for resources because that's just kind of who I am. And I found a few great resources and it was really focused on seeing your time as your money and budgeting it. And I learned how to use a secretary. My mom was she was always the secretary for like the president of the company, the CFO of the company. And I was talking to my mom about it and she said, Pam, how are you using your secretary? And I said, well, what do you mean? And so she started showing me what she did as a secretary for people. And so what I learned is your secretary can be your accountability partner for all the things. The stress of the job comes from, and the feeling of I'm never going to get everything done comes from having the plates just spinning all the time, to my estimation. So I learned how to use my calendar to set time for when I was going to do everything. And I'm talking when I'm going to have my breakfast every day is on my calendar. When I am going to check email, I do not look at email all day. I do not keep email. My notifications on my phone are not on. Everyone knows if you want to contact Pam, you need to call this number if you have an emergency, because I am not going to live in the device. I'm not going to live in my computer. And I set the time I'm going to have lunch every day, and I go to the cafeteria and I have lunch. I set every assignment that comes in through email because people love to send tasks through email. It it gets onto my calendar as an assignment for me to do. And there are super easy tools just to slide it right over to your calendar. And that that lets me know I'm not going to forget everything. And because that's a big part of the stress is something needs to be done because it's sitting there in your inbox, but you don't know when you're going to do it. And I can't forget that. And what happens to those people who don't schedule it all, you can look, and if their email inbox has 1,000 items in it, that's their stress. So quit living that way. You don't have to live that way. So I think number one key is getting everything into your calendar. I also, when I came to the high school level, because our high school is like a community college, the campus there is always something going on here. So as I stepped from the middle school to the high school, I said, okay, I'm going to set a boundary and I'm going to have 2 events per week that I go to. And so I plan ahead and I look and I make sure that I've gone to at least one lacrosse event. And I look for, like certain games, the shows, all of those things. And there are certain times of the year I might have to stretch that boundary a bit. But generally, with my team, we're able to set those boundaries. I also practically learned about the circle of control, the circle of influence, and the circle of concern. Because in our work, and this is true for everybody, this is not just leaders, but in our work and in our world, we have access to more information than we've ever had in human history. And with that, there can often be a feeling that there should be something that you're doing about all of the things. And especially if you're a person like me who thinks they can change the world. Um, and so I use that as a tool. When I'm feeling that feeling, I draw a circle on a piece of paper. And inside that circle, I write all the things that are in my control. And all the things that are on my mind, they're in one of those 3 circles or completely outside of it. And I let things go that are not in my control. Um, Student attendance is a good example. I have a lot of staff, and we're partially measured as a school on our student attendance rate. So we define what we can influence, and then we communicate about that. And then we realize we are doing what we can do. We have researched, we know what we can do, and we're doing what we can do. And you exhaust all the things you can do, and then you don't live in that place of angst and frustration. I think being a leader, the reason that you go through all of the things that you do as you're completing that portfolio is you are learning who you are and defining who you are, because there's going to be so little definition in the job that if you can't center yourself and focus yourself there, you're going to burn out. You're not going to be able to be effective. And I think it's key. So those are my biggest practical tools I use. Um, let's see. Let's see. Oh, the other thing, I was a person who, whenever I was teaching, I had a group of friends, and uh, one of the ladies was really into yoga, and she got all of us to go. And so it became the thing that we did. And so I learned a lot about breathing and movement through that. So over the years, I've continued that. So with that calendar thing, I also have self-care that I put on there. I put my family time there. And I don't feel guilty about it because everything's on my calendar. So if I need evidence for myself that I am giving my all, I can look and say, yeah, I spent 6 hours at student events this year. I think I can take that hour and a half to go and get a massage today. And so it's something about having it written down on the page makes a big difference in allowing yourself to care about yourself and your family. And and be present in all of those things, because the way you build relationships is not just physically being somewhere. It's the connections that you're going to have. And if you are thinking about 50 other things while you're there, why be there?
Okay, pause. Let's all just take a collective
She had a lot to
deep
say
breath.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just take a deep breath together. I mean, reach for your phone and turn off those notifications. I know for
Truth.
some of you, you might be having a panic attack.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't want Gina. I need to have my notifications
Can't
on.
live without it.
I can't. But seriously, your cortisol levels will thank you.
Yes. Yes, please. You know, you think you're in charge of a school building until your phone buzzes. And then suddenly that power struggle begins, right?
Pam has truly given us a gift here. It is accountability. She's not just talking about boundaries. She's scheduling them, protecting them, and even inviting her assistant to help her hold them. And honestly, that's real leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great reminder for all of us, myself included. I'm not a building school leader, but can we just speak truth here?
Mm-hmm.
The world will still be spinning if you don't check your inbox every 10 minutes. That is speaking truth to someone listening to this right now.
Maybe her name is Gina. I don't know. Straight up. You know, Pam's system is brilliant. Everything becomes a calendar item. Now, listen, I know some of you are like, Gina, I do not agree with you. Everything does not need to be a calendar item. But for some of us, if we would just take time to schedule those things that we forget too often or that we think are too mundane, it actually will help us to treat our time like we treat our money, right? Like to budget it accordingly. So from breakfast to emails to student events, that's what Pam was using her calendar for. It also helped her to keep things in front of her so she didn't miss anything. It's all about putting structure around your time so you're not constantly reacting to everything.
Yeah. It reminds me, I've spent a lot of time with our dear friend Tim Elmore, who's also joining us this season later on. But he always says leadership is not about prioritizing your schedule, but scheduling your priorities.
Hey, of course he has a good saying.
Should I say that again?
Yes. That was
leadership is not about prioritizing your schedule, but about scheduling your priorities. Put those quote unquote big rocks on your calendar first, and then everything else falls in line. So when that inevitable stress creeps in, Pam, she pulls out her circles that she talked about, the circle of control, the circle of influence, the circle of concern. And if it's not in her control, somebody needs to listen to this. If it's not in her control, she releases it. That's not just emotional resilience. That is wisdom. There's wisdom in that.
Yes, it was profound to even hear her talk about that and to shape it in such a practical way to implement it in our own lives. So coming up next, Pam walks us through a few defining moments. There were times when she had to learn the hard way why boundaries matter. These are lessons that shape the way we lead and live.
So I know that listeners can't see this picture behind me, but you can see this picture, and it is a picture of Paris at different times of the day. And the reason that picture is right there next to my desk, my dad died in 2004, and his message to me before he died was, don't put things off. You only have your health for so long, and don't spend all your time working. Then in 2019, my mother-in-law died, and in 2021, my father-in-law died. And the two of them had spent their lives saving for one day. The only trip they ever took was a trip to Paris where they bought this picture. And so whenever they had passed away, I said, I want the Paris picture, because I think you need that reminder that time is on a budget and no one has endless time. And if you haven't done that personal search to decide really what you want to prioritize in your life, I think that all leaders should do that. I have on my team this year a brand new assistant principal, and she loves work. She loves work. She does. And she gets joy from it. But she also has 2 little ones. And, having adult children myself, I know that time, that is so limited. And so I'm constantly kicking her out of her office and saying, "Okay, day's done. You're going home. No more work today." Um, but I think as leaders, we have a responsibility to do that for our colleagues. Going back to that calendar thing, you can put that tool in place, but if you don't have someone holding you accountable to it, and it can be anybody who can see your calendar can say to you, "Did you go to lunch today?" Because it's on your calendar. Um, that, but I think losing 3 parents of our set of parents from me and my husband, it really shows you how fleeting life can be. And it's so sad that I didn't learn that lesson until later in life. My own children give me a hard time for the number of hours they spend in schools because they were at school a lot. And I did learn the lesson a little too late. So hopefully my words can help some people learn it a little earlier. Um, I think as a leader, once you're a principal, especially, if you don't do it, you will burn out in this job. It will take everything you're willing to give it. All jobs will, really.
Andrew, one of the things I admire most about Pam is how intentional she is, not just with her leadership, but with her life. You can hear it in her stories. She's decided that her time is precious and that she spends it in a way that reflects her values. That's just not inspiring. I think it's a challenge for all of us.
Yeah. There's something profound in what she said about time being on a budget, right? We don't make time for the things that actually fill our souls. The urgent will devour the important every single time, right? In fact, I've heard leaders call it the tyranny of the urgent, right? It's that thing that's like constantly on us of like, this is what's most important. And if you're not intentional about that, it can take over.
And, Pam talked about the picture of Paris that was behind her and that it was more than art, that it was a nudge. It was a tangible reminder for her that nobody has endless time, that we all need that visual cue that says, don't wait to live your life.
Yeah.
I think it was like a conviction for me too. And kind of like what I started off the episode talking about is like that pursuit of getting things and doing things, but not making time for things.
Yeah.
Just really a cool mirror moment, I think, for myself and maybe for some of our listeners as well.
Yeah. Another thing that sticks out to me is I love how she talked about leaders holding one another accountable, not just to get more done, but also holding one another accountable to stop working, right?
Yeah.
To rest, to prioritize family. And that she defines as real, true leadership. And I think she's correct on that.
And it's exactly what Pam is modeling for her team. She isn't just living this out for herself and then not expecting others to walk in it. She's holding their hand. She's walking with them as well to do the same. Up next, she's going to take us behind the scenes of how she creates space for reflection, planning, and restoration. Starting with a team retreat in the mountains. Appalachia here. I know about the mountains.
They do good for the soul.
But you guys, seriously, you're going to want to take some notes for this.
So we set aside 4 days at the beginning of each summer for a retreat. And at that time, we all, as a big team, and it's not just assistant principals, it's our entire team of leaders. We go away. I take them to the mountains. We stay in cabins, and we spend a lot of time knowing each other, building the relationships, and working through the improvement of our school. And we focus in those 2 areas, that culture climate area and that achievement and growth area. And we clearly define what we want to accomplish. We schedule in our calendar all the markers where we will watch how we are achieving. And then I teach them how to build your calendar the same way. And we are accountability partners to one another. in our district, the assistant principals and teachers, they are allowed 5 personal days a year. So I encourage them to plan out when their 5 personal days are going to be. They usually take them like around a weekend so they can get away and things like that. So as far as self-care, we work through one good example. Those random things that pull you away are the things that can mess up that calendar. So one of the things that we have done for this year is we have set up a calendar for the year where 1 week, so it would be 1 week every 6 weeks, they set aside time where they are the on duty, and you have 2 administrators who are on duty to whether it's another person on the leadership team or an assistant principal. And those are the people who handle all the things that are emergencies. And that way we can prioritize getting into a classroom. We can prioritize those meetings that have to take place. And, that's what it's really about, is teaching everyone on your team to use that. And I think it builds trust with people when you show them that you value them as human beings and you value their health and their family time. So those are some of the strategies that we use. It's just really stretching out what I am doing for me and growing them as leaders so that they have that tool in their toolbox.
Okay, Gina. Real talk.
Yeah.
How do I get invited to one of Pam's team retreats? Did she bring that up? Because I will carry bags. I'll make coffee. I'll do whatever.
I mean, well, you live in Georgia and she's in Georgia, so I think it's real.
Yeah, I just need to get on the list.
I agree. I genuinely believe you. You'd probably show up with a color-coded binder and a motivational playlist.
At least one of those things would happen.
Okay,
yes.
I think the playlist.
Yeah.
But listen, I get it. Mountain retreats. Shout out to Jamonville in the Laurel Highlands of Pennsylvania. Having a beautiful space to retreat to and to just lean in and listen to one another and to grow, there's just nothing like it. And I know that it's not in everybody's budget. So for those listening, they're like, Gina, I don't have a way to do that.
Yeah.
I think the thing that we need to think about is making time.
Yep.
And how the making time is the next level of leadership. Pam's not just building a calendar, she's also building a culture. And this is one of the ways she's doing that.
Yeah, and doing it on purpose too,
Mhm.
right? When your whole team is aligned and refreshed, work gets better.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be a mountain retreat. Like you said, for some people, that's not feasible. But I bet there's a quiet, beautiful space somewhere in driving distance from your school, right, where you could take your team. Because the reality is that kind of clarity doesn't come by accident.
No,
You
not
have
at
to be
all.
intentional.
So Pam goes on to share how healthy boundaries don't actually limit us. They really help us define expectations, allow us to hit our goals, and even develop our people. Let's listen. Whenever you're coming in as the new leader, the number one thing that people want to know is, how is she going to think about things and answer things? That's the only way you can get away from micromanaging, is to show them where they can live. And so, meaning, what would Pam do in this situation? If they're wearing a little bracelet that says, what would Pam do? And so at our first retreats, we established that together. And I tell them my story, and I tell them I want to change the world. And these are the 2 avenues. And I say, I want it to feel like a Disney World experience when kids walk in every day. I want it to be the happiest place on earth. Oh, that's the magical. Disneyland, I guess, is. And if they're not happy when they walk in, they can't be successful. And then we want high quality instruction happening in every classroom. So we created a statement of why we exist. And our statement is, we exist to ensure all students learn. So that allows them the space to be decision makers. So I think setting the clear expectations, letting them
set, okay, here's how we're going to measure and know that we're achieving this. Being focused in your data and knowing this is what we're focused on. And that's all the work we do in our retreat together. And so it's not a Pam thing. It is a team. The whole team sets this focus. We have 2 team members, one who is our culture climate lead and one who is our student achievement and growth lead. And so everything falls under those 2 areas. I think it's really important to simplify what your focus is. You can't be focused in 50 directions. So I worked with a former team, and this teammate is now a principal, and she started as an instructional coach with me, and I promoted her to an administrator. And when she would first come to me, she was very nervous about my expectations. And I wasn't as good about setting expectations clearly then. So that's what I learned along the way, is how to do that. And so we did an exercise where I brought in circles of all the stuff we do. And then I split them into 2 groups and they put it together. And I said, you show me how this all goes together. And so by the end of the day, we had one map of how everything connected to those 2 areas. So it gave them a clear mind map of what I have. This year, I created a card game where I did the same thing, and I just passed out the cards to everyone. And so that's how they decided their responsibilities this year and what they would be over. And in doing that, they didn't even realize it. But in doing that, they were deciding how things were connected to each other and how they would operate as a team. I don't need to decide all that. I really don't. So I think all of it, it's really all about everyone clearly knowing this is what my responsibilities are every day, and this is what my goal is, and this is how I'm going to measure it. And this is when I'm going to have to talk about how I measured it. It's taking the PLC concept and just applying it to leadership. That's all you're doing. We are a collaborative team. So if I take all of that work, that PLC work, and I apply it here to my leadership team, ta-da.
You know, if Pam ever did hand out those "What would Pam do" bracelets, I mean, I think I would rock one.
I'd take one too.
For real.
Yeah.
I like me some Pam. Because, you know, what she's modeling here is strategic, shared leadership. Everybody's all in.
Yeah, for real. And from the clarity of we exist to ensure all students learn to the way she empowers her team to own their work, it's not just vision casting. I think it's also team building.
Yeah, and that in itself is grounded in trust, right? So when people know the expectations and how their role connects to the bigger mission, they don't need micromanaging. They need encouragement, they need space, and clear markers for success.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's what I keep hearing in Pam's story over and over and over. She's leading with clarity for sure, but she's also leading with creativity in how she connects with her team members, right? So whether it's a mind map, a card game, collaborative planning, whatever it is, she's leaning into a style of leadership that builds buy-in and creates healthy boundaries at the same time. Buy-in and boundaries.
You know, I like it.
A little alliteration.
Hey. And boundaries are where we're headed next. In this next segment, Pam's going to talk about boundaries because part of healthy leadership is being able to say no.
Well, I do want to say one thing first. I do teach everyone that we never say no. But what I tell them is we never say no. What we do tell people is what we can do. So in every time you're really just you're looking at your control circle and saying, you're asking something of me. I'm going to look at my circle of control and I'm going to tell you this is what is in my control or my influence. And so I would say I never live in the place of the saying no. But a situation when I first became a principal, I'll never forget this because it made me so nervous. I became a principal in during the school year because the person that I was replacing was promoted into a county level position. So it was, Pam, you're hired, and now you're in charge in 2 or 3 weeks. Um, so it was really quick, and it was about a month before the testing season of the year. And when there's testing season, the principal's usually got to be there. So at the same time, my husband was invited to a conference in Hawaii, and uh-huh, a 5-day conference in Hawaii. And I was like, honey, I don't know how. And he's like, babe, we are never going to have an all expense paid trip to Hawaii in our lives again. And so I went. I was so nervous, and I was like, well, I've got to ask. And plus, Hawaii, really? And so I went to the county leaders, and luckily in our district, we have a very supportive group of leaders. And I'll never forget the conversation because this person had been a former principal. And she looked at me and she said, Pam, you are not the only person who can worry about testing in that building. And she said, of course you're going to go to Hawaii. Of course you're going to do this trip. And give everyone my name. And if there are any issues at all, they can call me. And it was fine. And I went, and the world didn't fall apart. And believe it or not, testing went on, and things were just fine without me there. I did explain why to my staff, and I think it did serve as a good example for them. And I'll tell you, we have these things on our calendar called critical days, and they're the days when it would be really hard to get a substitute for a teacher. And so what I tell my staff is every year, if you need to take these days ever, and you need to come to me and ask me for a personal day, then I want you to ask yourself, is this a once in a lifetime event? If it is, my answer is going to be yes, every time. If it's not, then I'm going to ask you not to take that time. So that's kind of what I live by on that.
Okay. Let's take a collective deep breath and repeat after me. I am not the only person who can worry about testing.
I am not the only person who can worry about testing.
Thank you for doing that
Yes.
with me.
We didn't even plan it.
Pam's story to me is such a perfect reminder that the world keeps spinning. We've talked about that, but even when we take a step back and let other people step up, the world keeps spinning.
And sometimes, we just need somebody to hold a mirror up and help us see that there are other options than the ones that we think are available.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to have a healthy team. That's why it's important to have conversations. That's why it's important to have accountability. I love Pam's approach. She doesn't just say no. She communicates what she can do. I think because sometimes when people hear no, they immediately think of it as a negative instead of thinking about what the person did say they can do.
Yep.
And so she often, if not always, frames it, but here's what I can do, or here's what we can do. And that's a boundary, but it's a very generous one. It's rooted in the circle of control, and it's delivered with clarity and care.
Yeah. And Gina, that story about Hawaii, pure gold. It's also such a strong example for her team, right? Boundaries aren't just personal, they're also cultural. And when leaders model those healthy limits, they give others permission to do the same.
Pam has shared so much practical and heartfelt wisdom with us. Before we wrapped our time together, we asked her to share one more thing, a final word of encouragement for educators and leaders who relate to that feeling of being stretched just a little too thin.
I am so blessed and lucky to have a job that affords me the right to have joy and to inspire. And I would say that is a good indicator for anyone who is in this work. If you are not living every day and be able to find joy every day, if you are not inspired every day, then it's time for some introspection and time to figure out, okay, then what? Then why? Because this job can be overwhelming. We have new things that come at us all the time. So look for the joy, live the joy, be present, and have accountability partners. Because otherwise, the mission of this work can sometimes cause you to put you and your family behind all of it. And you got to know those priorities so you can keep the joy and keep that present.
What a gift Pam has been to this conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I'm struck by her call to live the joy, not just stumble across it once in a while, but to really be intentional about making space for it. And if that joy feels hard to find right now, maybe that's the nudge to pause, reflect, and realign.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the strongest through lines in everything Pam shared is this idea that healthy boundaries aren't just about protection, they're also about purpose.
Hey.
They're not just about protection, they're also about purpose. When we take time to budget our time, name our values, clarify expectations, we don't just survive our job, we create a space where we can lead with inspiration and other people are going to want to follow.
Yeah, so I think, you know, whether it's scheduling lunch or turning off your notifications or letting someone else handle the plumbing, you know, Pam reminded us that the goal isn't to do it all. It's to build something lasting by bringing others along.
Yeah. Woo! This was a good conversation.
It was.
She said a lot of things. Almost too many things, Gina.
Too many.
Yeah. We've got so much information. You might say we have TMI, too much information. So it's time for DMI. Now, DMI, of course, stands for Don't Miss It. Gina and I each want to highlight something from today's episode we don't think you should miss. There was so much wisdom that was shared. The most difficult thing is going to be picking something. So, Gina, I'm making you go first.
Of course you are. Okay. So, Pam, I could write a book about everything you shared, but the main thing, the main conviction point for me today was budgeting time and treating time like you treat, your finances and calendaring things. I'm great at calendaring meetings.
Yep.
And following systems and processes like traction. Shout out to EOS. I am good at that, probably because I'm caring about other people and making sure the schedule's in front of them. What I need to get better about, and I know I've done this as a leader for way too many years, I'm at the point in my career where I can say decades, is I will skip a meal or two, or I won't schedule myself a break, or I will be like, oh, if I could just go back to my laptop and get it done. Because it's funny, I don't have things on my phone so that I have boundaries, right? So I don't have the different platforms we use. I don't have them on my phone. But I also will still go get my laptop and work until midnight if I need to get something out. So just being healthier with the mundane.
Yep.
Right? So I'm pretty good. I know that there's seasons of work and I will do more in some seasons and less in others. But I also need to schedule the mundane and make sure I prioritize that because that's going to give me a healthy boundary and a healthy life. How about you?
Well, first of all, your thing is a good reminder for all of us, right? The hardest boundary to draw is the one that protects yourself.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a life-giving, or servant-oriented leader. So, she said so many good things. I think the thing I keep coming back to is what she talked about as her circle of control. Tim and I, when we would talk about it, we always used to talk about it as the three buckets, right? What's in your control, what's out of your control, what's within your influence. She talked about it in a very similar sense. There are so many things in the job of a leader that present as urgent, and therefore you feel like you need to take action on it. But if you actually do this exercise that she does, and you've asked the question, is this something that's actually in my control or not, right? What you'll realize is you could spend a whole lot of time worrying, fussing, even doing a lot of activity that you perceive as being helpful. but it's not actually moving the needle forward, right? So, I mean, she used great examples of like her email, right? As to whether she answers it in her control, right? But all of the urgent needs that quote unquote keep coming, quote unquote urgent needs that keep coming through her inbox, she can't solve all of those. There's not enough time in the day. She would spend her entire day answering emails. Or she talked about attendance, right?
Yeah.
Attendance is a number she answers for, but attendance isn't actually in her control, right? That's beyond her control. So she has to ask the question, what do I focus on that is in my control, that drives the purpose of the organization forward? I personally hate email, so I'm a little bit biased in my statement that I'm about to make.
True story.
But I do believe that this is true. Whenever I'm behind on email, I say out loud to myself, they don't pay me to answer email. And that is true. No matter who is listening to this, y'all, they don't pay you to answer email. That's not why they hired you. They hired you to run an incredible school, right? And sometimes that means answering email, but that's not your job, right? So there might be an email that sits in your inbox longer than you feel comfortable with it sitting there. But you have to remind yourself, they don't pay me to answer email. That's not my job.
That's so good.
My job is to run this school. My job is to drive our students towards success. My job is to support our teachers. And sometimes that means answering email. Other times that means leaving your email unanswered. So that's what I just love about the framing of how she put everything. When you focus on what your job actually is, the role you're meant to play, it frees you from some of that tyranny of the urgent as we talked about it. And I just think there's so much wisdom in that if we can get a hold of that.
As you're talking about email, I was thinking about how like there was a time where we didn't have email.
Yeah.
And people were super productive
Yeah.
and did amazing things. And guess what? There are still jobs that don't require email.
Yeah.
And people are still productive.
I need to find
and
me
they
one
do
of those.
amazing things, right? But it's like for those of us that are in the swirl, we think that that's the way the world is or that's the way work happens. And that might not be true.
Yep.
So very, very helpful reminder. This was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you for joining us today on this episode of the School on a Mission podcast. Now, before you hit skip on to your next podcast, we've got a little challenge for you. Grab a pen, a notebook, maybe a sticky note, or even the back of your hand. We want you to write down one action you're going to take this week. Maybe it's something you're going to do, something you're going to investigate, something you're going to read more about, or a person you might want to meet with. You got it? Perfect. Now DM us with your action step. We can't wait to see what awesome things you're up to. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep leading your school on a mission. Thanks for listening in to this episode of School on a Mission, a podcast for educators by educators, produced by Growing Leaders and powered by the Maxwell Leadership Foundation. To learn more about Growing Leaders, visit growingleaders.com. And for more information about the School on a Mission podcast, head to schoolonamissionpodcast.com.